Can smaller agencies save the ad business? I think so, and our guest today on the DesuckifyWork Podcast gives us plenty of reasons to believe. Drew McLellan runs the Agency Management Institute with his wife, Danyel. They help small to mid-size agencies make the hard work of running the business easier, less lonely, and more profitable. Drew helps us understand just how that can happen during our conversation. The key takeaways? Be human. Don't hide your flaws, own them. Show the team that you're open to working on them. Live by your values. Don't just post them in the break room. Talk about them regularly and help people see how they can live them through the work they do. Pull back the curtain. You run a business. Your team knows this and wants to understand more about it. How can their work contribute to the success of the agency? Why does it matter in the big picture? These are all things that smaller agencies can do really well. And if they do, they can bring a lot of hope back to an industry that has felt a bit off course for a while now. We can do work that matters. We can create environments that treat people well. We can make our clients a ton of money and make the world a bit kinder in the process. It's not a zero-sum game. It's an invitation to embrace creativity and humanity in all that we do. And I hope more of us respond to that call with enthusiasm and curiosity. Listen to Drew for even a few minutes, and I think you'll be on board. Okay, Drew McLellan, welcome to the DesuckifyWork Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, likewise. I'm excited to dig into some stuff. I know you're from the agency world. You work with a lot of agencies in your current work, and I think there'll be a lot of interesting stories to share. I'd love for you to get a chance to just, tell everybody what you do for work and maybe a little bit about how you came to be doing it.
Sure. So Agency Management Institute is sort of educational think tank and training ground for agency owners and leaders.
Okay.
And so it's been around since the late 90s. Everybody who works at AMI either currently owns an agency and is doing this work part-time, facilitating some of the groups or that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. My wife and I are co-owners of AMI. We both have owned agencies for over 20 years. We sold my wife's. We still have mine, actually.
Okay.
And so what we do is we help agency owners run the business of the business. So most people who own agencies are accidental business owners. They worked in agencies and all of a sudden they either got laid off or something happened. They thought, oh, you know what? I'll just do some consulting till I find a job. Mm-hmm. Or I'm going to start a little agency, and next thing they know, they have 10 employees and they're having to figure out what a P&L says, and they're dealing with HR issues, and that just wasn't their training. They're really good at the client-facing stuff, but the idea of running the business profitably is kind of foreign territory to them. And so they do it kind of by the seat of their pants, and some are more successful instinctually than others, but there's actually a lot of best practices and objective metrics that help agency owners really run their business well and profitably and in a way that, keeps employees around and clients around. And so we teach all of that through everything from a weekly podcast that's been around for about 8 years to workshops, to a conference we do every May. And then kind of the heart of AMI are what we call peer groups. So kind of like a Vistage group or an EO group, only everyone around the table owns an agency. And so you're literally surrounding yourself with peers who walk the same walk you walk every day. And so they learn from us, but they also learn a lot from each other. And we have a core philosophy that everybody learns faster and better when we learn together. So we've just tried to create a community feel where, agency owners, it's lonely. You don't want to tell anybody how business is going or where you're struggling because everybody's your competition. And we've just tried to eliminate that. And we have sort of there's plenty of fish in the sea for everybody. But if we help each other, then everybody gets better faster. So that's kind of what we do every day.
I like it. And I think it's interesting because I think for those of us who aren't running agencies, but have spent a lot of time in the agency world, you might lose sight or not be clued into some of the challenges that show up for agency owners.
Yeah, right.
And I think, the loneliness is the one that kind of jumps out at me because I think I think you just presume, you got it all together.
Right.
You're running a business. Like life is great. Lonely. What are you talking about? You're on top of the
Right.
world. So
Right.
that's a really interesting thing. And when I think about, what I'm trying to do here with this Desuckify Work podcast, and that's kind of my mission overall for my business. And I'm doing coaching as well as some consulting work on the ad side. That's an interesting piece of that, right? Like work cannot be great at a lot of levels, but at the owner level, that's interesting to me. And I think it might be eye opening to some folks who
Yeah.
aren't at that level, and maybe to folks who are at that level, but haven't really allowed themselves to acknowledge that, oh, yeah, work can sometimes suck, even if you've got what appears to be, a great thing going. So when
Well,
you,
and no one has a great thing all the time, right? I
yeah,
mean, even a
mm-hmm,
super successful business, there are
mm-hmm,
days or months or, in this case, 23 has been brutal for agencies. So
tough,
there's
yeah,
days, months, or a year where
mm-hmm,
it is painful and
yeah,
hard, and it feels like you're dragging a boulder up a mountain every
mm-hmm,
freaking day.
yeah,
And, coming off of COVID and the Great Resignation,
mm-hmm,
agency owners, a lot of them went into 23 already a little fatigued.
yeah,
And then to have it be such a tough year because of the economy and all the other reasons,
mm-hmm,
that just magnifies the loneliness. And so what we really try and do is provide best practices, like here's how to make that better, but also
mm-hmm,
just some support to say, you know what? This is sucking for everyone right now. This
yeah,
is not you doing it badly. This is
mm-hmm,
not you not knowing what you're doing, but this is just a hard season and we have to sort of shoulder it together.
mm-hmm,
Let's help each other get through it and know that hopefully 24 is going to turn around and be better.
yeah,
Sometimes you just need the support and encouragement. And so a lot of our work is that. So I often say, we're sort of partial financial experts, we're partial finance people experts. And
mm-hmm,
part of it's we're shrinks, we're psychologists, we're a
mm-hmm,
support system, and
yeah,
all of those things are important.
mm-hmm. What has been the best way that people have been able to kind of keep their head up during the tough times this year?
Well, it's interesting because for a lot of agencies, it's been, life is never black and white.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, for a lot of agencies, biz dev has been really brutal this year. It's been really
Mm-hmm.
hard to land new business. But
Yeah.
on the upside, they have one of the best teams they've ever had. They're feeling finally like they've sort of cycled through,
Mm-hmm.
during COVID and right after COVID, agencies were desperate for bodies.
Yeah.
There were fewer bodies in the market, so they were hiring whatever they could. They've
Mm-hmm.
now sort of cycled through, kept the employees that were good, gotten rid of the employees that were not right fits for
Mm-hmm.
them. So they're feeling like their team is awesome. So
Yeah.
then you have the dichotomy of feeling really great about the team, don't have enough work to keep them busy.
Mm-hmm.
Do I let them go, which financially is the right thing to do, but they were
Mm-hmm.
so hard to find
Yeah.
that I'm afraid I won't find them again. And so, you know, it's been a mixed bag like every single year is. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's the reality of business, I think, is,
Mm-hmm.
there are days when you would sell your business for a nickel.
Mm-hmm.
And there are days when you skip home because you had such an amazing day, and
Mm-hmm.
either you changed the trajectory of an employee or a client or both, and you just feel like you're in the exact right place. And I think that's business ownership, is understanding the ebb and flow of all those emotions and all of the, some things are super easy and some things are mentally taxing. And that's the grind of owning a business. But it's
Mm-hmm.
also the joy of owning a business.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I guess I would say I'm owning my own solo business right now, and I'm feeling some of those things, and so I can certainly relate to it. Um, one of the things that I thought of as you were mentioning that it was a little slow because biz dev is slow this year. Has there been any opportunity for folks to lean into training a little bit more this year, trying to kind of set themselves up for the hopeful, better 2024?
Yeah, but when biz dev is slow, cash flow is slow. So am I going
Mm-hmm.
to invest in training then?
Yeah.
So, we put on maybe 12 or 15 workshops throughout the year. And
Mm-hmm.
what we've seen is that, attendance has been pretty consistent. So yes, I think people are still investing in it. But I
Mm-hmm.
think people who have sort of thought about doing it but haven't dabbled in it and haven't experienced the value of having smarter people or agency owners being smarter. So, again, we've had no attrition in our peer groups, but those are people who've been in the peer groups and they know the value of it. And we're
Mm-hmm.
actually seeing an uptick in people attending. So I do think despite the fact that cash flow is tight,
Mm-hmm.
when people are validated that the training is going to be worth it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I think they're willing to invest in it. I also think, there's a lot of training and learning that you can do on your own, whether it's book or podcasts and
Yes.
things like that. And,
Mm-hmm.
I know we're seeing more trajectory on the podcast and places like that. I mean, our numbers are going up. So I know more people are listening. So I think people are trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to find resources that are credible, that understand their specific industry. One of the things that agencies wrestle with is their clients want you to be an expert in their industry. They don't want to teach you
Mm-hmm.
hospitality or healthcare or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
industry is. Well, agency folks are like that too. They want to talk to people who know exactly what agencies need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they find those resources, and there are not a ton of them out there, but when they
Yeah.
find those resources, then they tap into them pretty hard.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. One of the things that kind of jumped off the page on your guys' site for me, your values. Um, the first one says we lead with love, and that struck me as refreshing and a little unusual in
Mm.
the agency world, right? Which can sometimes feel very cutthroat and pretty hardcore. Where does that value come from, and how does it show up in the work you do?
I think it's born. I think when you own a business and it's a privately held, closely held business, the values
Mm-hmm.
of the business are the values of the owners, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so for Danielle and I, my wife, for
Mm-hmm.
Danielle and I, it's sort of how we approach life. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's our job is to love on people and to support them and help them
Mm-hmm.
feel less alone. And so, yeah, we teach math and we teach agency math and we teach HR practicalities and but
Mm-hmm.
underneath all of that, our clients are people who want to be celebrated, want to be seen, want to be recognized, want to be heard. And when
Mm-hmm.
you think about it, and I'm sure you see this in your business too, when you think about it, when you own a business, it impacts every aspect of your life, right? It
Mm-hmm.
impacts your marriage, it impacts your kids, it impacts
Mm-hmm.
whether or not you can go on vacation. It
Mm-hmm.
impacts the fact that because you own the business, you can leave at 3 o'clock to go visit your mom in the nursing home. So
Mm-hmm.
good and bad
Yeah.
is not, there is no separation. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to do the work we do without caring about the people we do it for and without
Mm-hmm.
surrounding them with the support they need, not just
Mm-hmm.
intellectually, but also emotionally and mentally. And so we just we just really believe, and part of it, quite honestly, is I'm half Italian, and so I hug everybody, and so that for a lot of people that translates to being loving, and for me
Yeah.
it's just life, right? That's how
Just
I was
normal.
raised. Yeah. So but I think our clients feel and know that we just finished, so we do a lot of M&A work. We help a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people buy and sell their agencies. And we just wrapped up a 18-month engagement where two long-term employees bought the agency from the founders, a
Mm-hmm.
husband and wife founder team. And I got an email from the wife the other day, and she said, I knew you were the right ones for us when I saw your values and I saw love and
Mm-hmm.
those kind of words all over it, because I knew this was going to be a very personal journey to walk away from a business that we had run for 30 years, that we
Mm-hmm.
had, stayed up nights worrying about. I needed somebody who would actually care about us as people as well
Mm-hmm.
as care about the business. And so for some people, I'm sure they see that and go, absolutely not. These are
Yeah.
not our people. And you know what? That's great. It's good that, that's why we're so bold about it, because
Mm-hmm.
we can't change how we work and we can't
Right.
change how we approach the work. So we might
Mm-hmm.
as well be really upfront about how we do it. And you either
Yeah.
go, that resonates, or yeah, that's yucky. I don't want that. I don't want the love. I just want the numbers.
Want the numbers.
Okay. then I can refer you to somebody else who does what we
Yeah.
do, but doesn't
Hmm.
do it in the same way.
Yeah. No, I can appreciate that. And what I wonder if you get a chance to observe that love and that approach, do you get to see how the work you do with the owners and the heads of these agencies flows into the teams at large? Like, I don't know what your
Sure.
engagements are like. Do you get to see that and really
Yeah.
notice how that shows up?
Yeah, I mean, some of the work we do is just with the owners, but a lot of the work is with the leadership team, or we're on site with the entire agency. And
Mm,
so we do get to see how it trickles through the organization.
mm,
And, we'll have we'll show up someplace and somebody will be like, "Oh, you're Drew and Danyel." Like they've heard our names, right?
mm-hmm,
And the agency owners come back from a peer group or whatever, and they have this notebook full of we have to do all these things, and so the
mm-hmm.
employees know who we are.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's our job to show up how we show up for all of those people. And
Mm-hmm,
agency owners want to be great employers. They really do.
mm-hmm,
And I will say, we do a salary and benefit survey. They're super
mm-hmm,
generous with their people, not just in salaries, but in all of the perks and benefits, both
mm-hmm,
formal and informal.
mm-hmm.
Um, and employees, they want to find a home. They want to find a place where they can matter, where they
Yeah.
can really contribute, but also where those contributions are recognized and appreciated. So
Mm-hmm,
I think when we can help the agency owners run the business better, run it
mm-hmm,
with more profit, which allows them to trickle that through the organization, create bonus programs, more generous vacation policies, all that stuff. I
mm-hmm.
do think it has impact, long-term impact on employee retention, employee satisfaction, the quality of work that the agency does. All of that stuff is so interwoven. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy at my job and I know my boss sees when I go above and beyond, I want to go above and beyond. Well, that's great for the
Mm-hmm.
client, which is great for client retention. It's all so intricately woven together that I don't think you can pull on one string without pulling on a bunch of others.
Yeah, I mean, I think that shows up for anyone at any level in an agency. You can feel that,
Yeah.
just that sudden boost of sudden feeling like you're getting recognized, more appreciated, more.
Yeah.
There's that connection with the team, and I
And
think
that
about.
and that gets back to your question before. So one of the things I say to employees is, when was the last time you said to your boss, you're the agency owner? So they're human beings too. They want to be recognized. They want to be
Mm,
seen. But very few employees stop to think and say, I should say thank you for
mm,
sending me to that conference. Or I should say,
hmm.
I really appreciate how flexible you are with my time. It lets me pick my kid up after school, or,
Hmm.
whatever it is.
Right.
So agency owners don't get a lot of that, which is one of the things, honestly, they get from us saying to
Hmm.
them, you're doing a good job. You
Yeah.
are, here's what the norm is, because we're seeing it because we're working with hundreds of agencies. Here's what
Hmm.
the norm is for vacation or
Right.
raises or fill in the bank.
Hmm.
Here's what you're doing. Do you recognize how awesome you are and what you're
Hmm.
doing for your people? Nobody says that to them. And
Yeah.
so that's part of our job, is to help them sort of look in the mirror and go, you know what? I don't suck. I am doing good. I
Mm,
am taking good care of my people. I am encouraging them. I am mentoring them. I am creating
mm,
opportunity for them and their families, because they don't get a
hmm.
lot of credit for that.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, I've spent time in some smaller shops, and it's tough. I think in any agency it's tough, but as employees, I think you tend to bring the bad stuff up.
Mm,
I think, and
yep.
that's normal, right? I mean, I'm struggling with this thing, or this thing is frustrating me, but you don't tend to bring the great stuff up all that often. And I don't know whether that's just because you think, oh, life is great up there, therefore
Yep.
they don't need to hear from me. And I think there's a lot to be said for just acknowledging the humanity through the agency that I think gets
Yep.
lost sometimes, right? We think about our own needs, or we presume things about those who are above us or below us. And
Yep.
how do you help agencies foster that kind of culture and dialogue where some of that conversation becomes a little more natural? It's not forced. It's just, oh, that's a fellow human being, whether that's the owner of the agency, whether that's,
Right.
a junior employee or anyone in between.
I think it starts with the agency owner setting the example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's twofold. So I think it's one, taking the pace of our work is so fast
Mm-hmm.
that it's so easy to just go, go, go and not stop and say, you know what? I saw what you did. I saw that you stayed late. I saw that you helped somebody else on an account that's not yours.
Mm-hmm.
I got an email from a client that said you were impressive. Whatever it is, it's so easy to not stop and say those things. So I
Mm-hmm.
think number one is really creating an attitude of gratitude and this sounds terrible, but scheduling, like tracking. One of the things we recommend to agency owners is that you keep an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet or whatever your tool of choice is,
Mm-hmm.
and you check when you have verbally out loud complimented an employee, and you keep the
Mm.
employee list because
Mm.
it's everybody has favorites. I don't care if
Yeah.
you say you don't. Everybody has
Yeah, of
favorites.
course.
So of course, you're nicer to those people. But when
Mm-hmm.
was the last time that the quiet little meek employee that never really raises their head above their desk, when was the last time you walked over to them and said, that code was so clean, the
Mm-hmm.
client was so impressed? So that's example number one. And number
Yeah, that's really
two
cool.
is the agency owner also has to be willing to be human,
Mm.
right? And to be able to say at an all team meeting, you know what, you guys, I'm tired. I
Mm.
know you're all tired, but you got to know I'm tired too. I'm trying so hard to
Mm.
bring new business in, and I'm frustrated that we are putting together these amazing proposals and these other things, and we're just not getting bites. But you know what? AMI is telling us that every agency is doing this. So I want you to know, and I
Mm-hmm.
need to remind myself, we're not doing anything wrong. It's just the season that we're in, right?
Yeah.
But being able to be that vulnerable or to say, you know what, I'm embarrassed to admit to all of you that client XYZ fired us today, and here's why.
Mm. Mm.
This is heartbreaking for me because this was an important client. We all worked really hard to win that piece of business, but you know what? We dropped the ball and we
Mm.
did this or we did that. And so I take ownership of that. I should have been, whatever it is. But
Mm-hmm.
agency owners often feel like they have to have all the answers and they have to present themselves like they are infallible and sort of unflappable. The
Mm-hmm.
truth of it is when you present yourself that way, your employees don't have the path to be fallible and
Mm-hmm.
and flustered because they don't have the example and so they think it's wrong. So
Mm.
then they show up in a way that is like, a little hardened as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
everybody really bringing their humanity to work and just admitting, both good and bad. Like we kicked ass today and I am so proud of us and I feel so good. This is why I do this work, but
Mm-hmm.
also on the days when it's not so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that as a leader, that can be tough, right? Because
Oh yeah.
you're worried if you show vulnerability that will your team sort of lose trust in you? Oh no,
Right.
I don't have it all together. Um,
Right.
um, but I think you're right. I think you're really modeling the kind of behavior you want to see from others. But do you find that people struggle with that if it's not natural to them, that they go, oh, I don't want people to see that there might be cracks because then they might be afraid that I don't have it figured out.
Well, I think it starts with the fallacy that the employees actually think we have it all figured out. They know better, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's what we want. It's sort of like our kids, right? We want our
Yeah.
kids to think that we know all the answers and
Mm-hmm.
are always right, and
Mm-hmm.
our kids know better too. So I think it starts with sort of accepting the fact that everybody knows you're flawed and
Mm-hmm.
human, right?
Yeah.
And then I think for some owners, it's actually a relief to be able to be more themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
there were a lot of horrible things that came out of COVID, but I think one of the good things that came out of COVID was it was an invitation for everyone that it was we had to be more human with each other because we were going through something we had never gone through
Mm,
before. It was
mhm,
affecting our families, it was affecting our lives. We were afraid. We didn't know what was coming around the corner because we'd never done this before. So I think
mhm.
it kind of opened the door to a new level of vulnerability. And for some agency owners, they've sort of stayed in that place and they've sort of been more human with their team. And for
Mhm.
others, they gravitated back to their sort of stoic ways. And
Yeah.
so they do need more coaching and reminding
Mhm.
that it's actually a relief to the employees when you can be more true to who you are in all aspects, because it
Mhm.
invites them to be more true to who they are too.
Yeah, I think you're seeing that sort of industry wide, like some folks, and this kind of shows up in the remote or hybrid or back to work
Yep.
kind of stuff. I mean, and I think there are valid reasons to choose any of those paths, but I think what you see is some people who are maybe choosing the back to work path are not coming at it maybe from a humanity perspective. And here's why I think this is good for all of us, but more of like the resorting back to the like, we just need to be here, butts in seats, da 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 da. And it brings back that sort of tight, close to the vest. I'm not going to really reveal the truth to you. I'm
Right.
going to kind of filter it through something that everybody can see. And then you have people, you talk about some of the challenges that have come through in the last few years. Engagement across every business is really struggling. But employee engagement, I think, in advertising is 30% maybe. Um,
Right.
and I think it's some of that. And what are you seeing? Because I know you focus on the sort of small to mid-sized agency world, which is very distinct from the kind of large holding company
Oh yeah.
model.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, do you see some of those same challenges? And if you do, how do you deal with them at that size of an agency?
Yeah, our clients for the most part are 100 employees or less, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
them are 10, 20, 30 employees. So it's
Yeah.
very closely held businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think one of the upsides of being that size business or owning that size business is that you really know your people pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also challenging because when you have to make hard decisions,
Mm-hmm.
like you have to cut staff or whatever it is, you feel the
Yeah.
impact of what that's going to do to somebody because you know that their kid's in college or their mom is
Mm-hmm.
sick or fill in the
Mm-hmm.
blank. And so
Yep.
you feel the impact of your decision on their life. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
challenging. But I also think it offers the opportunity to be more connected to your people and to be more human, if you will. And
Mm-hmm.
to your point, to say, look, you guys, the 5 days a week remote isn't working, right? We're missing the opportunity to sit in a room together and think out loud together. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, we can do that on Zoom, but it's not the same thing. And we're
Mm-hmm.
and we're missing the opportunity for the younger employees to absorb through osmosis and overhearing conversations some of
Mm-hmm.
the things that the senior people have been doing really well for years. And so we have to find we have to find a way to do this different that
Mm-hmm.
is of value to the clients, it's of value to each of us in terms of how we grow, but
Mm-hmm.
also we have to do it in a way that still allows people the flexibility that we've gotten used to in
Mm-hmm.
terms of sort of mismashing our life and work. I've never loved the phrase life work balance. I don't think it exists.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reality is everybody has a level of life work blend, which is they interact with each other, they conflict with each other, they
Mm-hmm.
stack on top of each other. And I think one of the things we're learning how to do as employers is how do we create a blend or an opportunity for blend that is fair to everyone and kind of treats everyone equally, but doesn't necessarily look the same for everyone. So,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of agencies are doing things like, okay, we're going to be in the office 2 or 3 days a week, and everybody needs to be in the office from 10 to 3. If 7 to 3 works for you better, great. If
Mm-hmm.
10 to 6 works better for you, great. But
Mm.
we're going to have these core hours where we do have the time to collaborate and work together. Back in
Mm-hmm.
the day, that would have never happened, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like everyone had to be in by 8, and we're going to have
Mm-hmm.
a traffic meeting at 8:30. And the
Yeah.
reason we schedule the traffic meeting is because that way everyone has to be there on time, and
Yep.
all those sort of things. So I
Yes.
do think the workplace is changing
Mm-hmm.
in some really good ways, but I
Yeah.
also think it's frustrating. And um, again, it's uncharted waters. So agency
Mm-hmm.
owners are trying to figure it out. They're trying to, and they're getting a lot of pushback when they start making changes. Everybody got
Mm-hmm.
very used to,
Sure.
and the pendulum swung to, like, people were literally getting on a Zoom call with their boss saying, "Oh, by the way, my family moved to Wyoming last weekend, but it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I can work. I can still work." Not
Mm-hmm.
asking, not having a conversation. So there's also, on the flip side
Mm-hmm.
of where the owner's at, the employees have this new sense of entitlement and are
Mm-hmm.
very emboldened to just tell their boss how they're going to work. And
Mm.
we're still trying to figure out the mechanics of that, right? Like, there's got to be a
Yeah.
happy medium where
Mm-hmm.
you don't actually get to just tell me you moved to Wyoming and you're going to keep your job. Because some
Yeah.
jobs that's not going to work for, and other jobs it might be fine. And so there's a
Yeah.
lot of ambiguity and uncertainty right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think throughout in every business. I mean, if you look at any business publication, they're all writing about,
Mm-hmm.
the change, how leadership is changing, how the
Mm-hmm.
workplace is changing. So I think for a lot of owners, they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting example of the folks who maybe moved without, mentioning it. And then, I think you have the flip side of there are some companies where maybe they did promise like it's okay to move, we're remote, and then
Right.
suddenly, or they hired somebody from Wyoming saying
Right.
it's going to be fine, and then 6 months later, 9 months later, they're like, huh. And so you have both sides of that equation, and I think it creates both. There's some stress, there's some trust issues that show up in both directions, right? It's
Yeah.
like as an employee, I'm like, maybe I'm frustrated. As an owner, I'm like, I'm trying to create as much flexibility in this workplace as possible, and
But we still have to be profitable.
but
We still
but I
have to be
have
able to
to,
take care of
yeah,
clients.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have to do the things I have to do, and
Yeah.
and I want people to understand that. And one of the things that you, somewhere on your site, you mentioned this thought that a lot of owners are wanting their employees to think a little more like an owner, right? To bring that sense of understanding the business side of things more. And I think for some people that's natural. They want to know a little more. And then for a lot of folks,
Yep.
it's like, I don't care. I do what I do. I write copy. I'm an account person, and I don't want to hear it. What do you do? How do you work with owners to maybe create a culture where there is more interest in learning about how the business runs and how their particular role ladders up to the bigger business goals?
Yeah, I think agency owners have to recognize that for some people, working at an agency is their career, and they really are invested in the
Mm-hmm.
agency's success, in their own growth. And for other people, it's a job. And you have
Mm-hmm.
to sort of recognize, you sort of have to know where people are at. And if it's just a
Mm-hmm.
job, again,
Mm-hmm.
treating everyone fairly doesn't mean treating everyone equally. So
Great
if
point.
somebody gives 120%, you give them 120% back. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
gives 85% because that's the minimum viable amount they can
Mm-hmm.
give, then you give them 85% back.
Mm-hmm.
And you invite them to join the other team, but you also don't sweat it if they don't. I mean, that's just part of
Mm-hmm.
the deal. But I
Yeah.
do think there are some things you can do to make everyone feel more connected to the business. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we teach is we've developed a bonus program, which for most agencies, it's the fourth quarter. I have some money in the bank. I'm going to give people bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that 2 or 3 years and it becomes an entitlement,
Yep.
right? As opposed to the way we approach bonuses, again, with the financial clarity that we teach, is bonuses should be tied to business performance. And your
Mm-hmm.
and your employees need to understand every month how we did against business performance, and did money go into the kitty for the bonus or not. And
Mm-hmm.
here's why money did or didn't go into the kitty. And when everybody cares about what we talk about all the time, which is adjusted gross income, which is
Mm-hmm.
the money that agencies actually have to spend on people, overhead, and profit, right after
Mm-hmm.
cost of goods are out of there.
Yep.
So when everybody cares about AGI
Mm-hmm.
And every month you're taking an opportunity to teach, here's how roles impact AGI, because every employee makes decisions every single day that either cost the agency money or makes the agency money. And when the
Mm-hmm.
employees understand that, what if I'm the financial person, if I'm the bookkeeper, what are the
Mm-hmm.
things I do that save us money or cost us money or make us
Mm-hmm.
money? If I'm the AE or the copywriter, what do I do that saves us money, makes us money, or costs us money? And when everyone cares about what the AGI is, because that's going to impact whether or not they get a bonus, now
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, even the people who think it's just a job kind of have to care, because
Mm-hmm.
now it impacts their pocket, right? So
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of ways to do that, but I think that's one of the ways. Another way, I think, is for agencies to be agency owners to be really clear about the sort of the mission, vision, and values of the business, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
here's who we are. Here's how the world is different if we're not here. Here's how we change our clients' world. I
Mm-hmm.
get it. We are not saving lives. We're not doctors. We're not, ER folks. We're not, but
Right.
we do actually help our clients keep their job.
Mm-hmm.
We do actually help businesses be successful so that
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to lay people off. We do have impact on other
Mm-hmm.
people's lives. It's not as direct as
Right.
other professions, but what we do is important. And
Mm-hmm.
celebrating that and recognizing that matters.
Yeah.
Understanding the values of the business and how, again, you show up to live out those values, or how you diminish those values in the eyes of your coworkers or your clients. Those kind of conversations, which get back to the agency owner being a little vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, those kind of conversations and those kind of celebrations, when people really show up, are
Mm-hmm.
again ways to connect people back to the core business of what we do and why we do it. And and one of the things we know is, especially around younger employees, they want to understand the bigger picture, not necessarily the business bigger picture,
Yeah.
but what am I doing to change the world through
Mm-hmm.
my work?
Yeah.
And you can work for a for-profit business that has business goals and objectives and still change the world.
Mm.
And when we connect those dots for the employees and we invite them to participate in that,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you move somebody from it being a job to a career. And it makes the people who are there for a career say, this is a place that I really want to invest in because
Mm-hmm.
I feel good about my work. I feel like my efforts are being appreciated. When I make the right decisions and I help the team, the
Mm-hmm.
bonus kitty gets added to. So it also helps me take care of my family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. All of those things line up for me. I do want to stay here. And that's where we see employers in the agency space that have employees that have been around for 10 or 15 years, when
Yeah.
the average is 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. It's amazing. I had a guy on my show earlier. Mike Wolfson runs an agency out in LA, and yeah, he was saying, their turnover is, something like 7 or 8% compared to the average of like 30% because of all
Right.
the things you're talking about. They invite
Yep.
people in to understand the values and understand the role they play and how it impacts, the business. And I think both sides of that can be really important. I think the value side is the one that probably is more obvious in the sense that people are craving purpose and they want to change the world. And that's a really great way to do it. But I think the business side, for at least a percentage of people, it suddenly gives you agency, right? You show up
Right.
to work and it's like, oh, all I do is I do this project and then I hand it off and I don't know what happens. It's like, no,
Right.
what you actually do is this thing. And let me connect some dots for you to understand how that behavior results in more money in
Right.
the pool. Or if you end up going down a different path, it can actually hurt that, just so you know that. So you're making much more informed choices
Right.
and don't feel blindsided when they go, oh, the kitty's empty.
Right.
Well,
No
shoot, what did I
bonuses this
do?
year.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
I
Yeah.
think there's so much value in that. And I think it's one of the huge benefits of smaller agencies is the ability for people to connect to work in that way. Because you get into
Yep.
the big holding companies and it's like, really hard for me as a mid-level copywriter to understand how I'm somehow,
Yeah. What's my role in this? Right.
what is the purpose of WPP?
Right. Right.
So that becomes a lot harder. And I think there's a lot more room to create the kinds of careers that do feel like they matter for people.
Mhm.
I think you mentioned the idea that people just want to have a place they feel like home.
Yeah.
Like I think you can feel that a lot more in the smaller places. I wanted to jump to a couple of things that you're doing and just get some insight on how those are showing up for you. The podcast you mentioned going on for
Mm.
8 years.
Yep.
What are some of the big things that you've learned from doing that podcast over the last 8 years?
One of the things that I love about the podcast is I get smarter with every
Mm-hmm.
episode, right? Because we have a 5 episode cycle. So the first 4 episodes are with a guest who serves agencies. And so I get smarter by asking them good questions. And then
Mm-hmm.
the fifth episode is what we call a solo cast. So it's really me or Danyel and I together
Mm-hmm.
teaching something. Um, so one of the things I learned is it's a great way for me to sharpen my saw all the time. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing is there's there's such power, and you probably know this too from your show. There's
Mm-hmm.
such power that people connect when they connect to a voice and a face.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've written blog posts, I've written books, I've done other things, and people like those, and that's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
the intimacy of the connection is
Mm-hmm.
very different. So I mentioned that we do a conference every May. So
Mm-hmm.
at every conference, there are, a third of the people I've met before and 2/3 of the people I've never met. And people will walk around a corner and go, I know who you are because they heard my voice, right? I was talking to somebody else. And they walk up. I've never met these people before. And they walk up and they hug me because
Mm-hmm.
they feel like they know me, right?
Yeah.
There's an intimacy of that connection, which I love. Again, you go
Mm-hmm.
back to our values. I
Mm-hmm.
want them to feel like they know us and we know them.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the medium for that.
Yeah.
I also love the discipline of having to do it every week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like it's like as agency people, we're so deadline driven.
Yeah.
And you have so much on your plate that if it's not due, it just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get done. So
Yep.
for me, I love the rigidity really of I gotta
Mm-hmm.
have a new episode out every week, so I better figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I like the fact that people can listen to it while they're doing other things. So people will say to me, "Well, you're on the golf course with me every Monday, or
Mm.
you walk my dog with me." And
Yeah.
people send me pictures of their dog and say,
Mm-hmm.
you walk Cooper with me, and and I get so again, it's not just a one-sided intimacy, right? I get to know the listeners
Mm-hmm.
if they are willing to reach out and connect, and so I love all of that.
Mm.
I also have learned from that people are very generous. They really
Mm-hmm.
do want to share what they know, and
Yep.
they are willing to do that without any expectation of what they get from it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that some of our guests get business after being on the show, but I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
some of them don't. But
Right.
they're invested in the industry, they're invested in their craft, and they want to share what they know. And so I love that generosity and that sense of, look, I'm just going to share my best stuff, and if people can use it, great. And if
Mm-hmm.
that results in business for me down the line, so be it. Right.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
so I love all of those things about podcasting. I really started it as kind of an experiment. Podcasting was just sort of coming into its own. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, well, I'm going to try this. And
Yeah.
now, honestly, I couldn't stop it if I want, even if I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
There's just too much demand. I
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't do that to the community at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a fascinating medium that it does make you feel like you know the person. I think
Yeah.
about some of the shows I
Yeah.
listen to, and it's like, yeah, I find myself occasionally feeling that, like, oh yeah, I know that person. It's like,
Yeah.
oh wait, well no, I don't, but I guess I do,
Yeah.
and it's pretty fascinating. I think, the learning that comes from it is also pretty fascinating, and the value that you're putting out, right? I mean, I think the ability to share knowledge in a way that is so natural and conversational.
Yeah.
To your point, it does create a big distinction between a book or a course, which have their place,
Yep.
definitely. But like, I think for some folks, you absorb that. And like you said, it's like you can absorb it anywhere, which is such a huge gift.
Yeah.
Um,
I also think too, the podcast lends itself to you being human. So it's back to what we
mhm,
were talking about with the
yeah.
agency owners, right? So
Hmm.
so in our newsletter and on the podcast, I'll talk about that I love the Los Angeles Dodgers. I'll talk
Hmm.
about our kids. I'll
Yeah.
talk about because and I'm telling a story because I'm going to bring it back to the business reason why I'm telling the story. But
Mm-hmm.
I do not believe in separating our personal life. I mean, I'm married to my business partner, so I kind of
Right.
can't, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I do not believe in separating our business life and who we are as business people from who we are as humans. And
Mm-hmm.
so I also think one of the great things about the podcast is I do think people get to know us as human
Mm-hmm.
beings. And I do think
Yeah.
they get a sense of who and how we are, which
Mm-hmm.
I love, right? To me,
Yeah.
it's again, it's shorthand to either we're your people or we're not your people. And
Mm.
either one is okay. And the quicker we can help you decide that, the better.
Mm-hmm.
That works for me.
Yeah. I think what showed up for me there is also you're sort of modeling a way of being that any agency owner can bring into their day-to-day work, which is
Yep.
to show up in conversations with curiosity and love and empathy, and and think about the connections in that way versus it being very business-like, where I'm going to
Yep.
teach you something. It's like, let's just talk, and how much value can come from when you're just talking and having a conversation rooted in mutual respect and caring for each other versus shifting into some weird business mode that we think we have to adopt. And I think that's been probably one of the best things I've seen in the last few years culturally in work is the shift from the business face and some of the hustle culture stuff that was really prevalent like 5 years ago, even. And I think coming through COVID, people have been like, all right, that stuff just got broken down. And now I'm just a person. So how do I show up as a person and know how to do my job, do it well, keep an eye on the profits, all that stuff? And it sounds like that's essentially what you're offering to people through your organization, is giving them a chance to show up that way. Maybe some are coming to it just now through COVID, and then others maybe kind of got ahead of the game,
I,
when
I,
they showed up
I
earlier.
I think for some people it was refreshingly different and they
Mm-hmm.
felt like they could just be themselves. For other
Mm-hmm.
people, I think it was harder. And one of the things that COVID did and Zoom has done is,
Mm-hmm.
you see people's kids, you see people's pets, you see their environment. Like
Mm-hmm.
your listeners and viewers can see that my office is Santa Central right now.
Yeah.
So I tried to clean it up, but there's just too much crap in my office and I
Yeah.
can't. Like it's
Yeah.
just like, okay, this is just the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I do think it forced us to be more human,
Yeah.
which I honestly think is a really good thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things, so we do a piece of research every year. We go out into the field and we do primary research. Normally, where we've done it for the last 10 years, and we call it
Mm-hmm.
the Agency Edge Research Series. Normally, we talk to people who hire agencies about something really specific, like
Mm-hmm.
why do you fire an agency? In 23, the study was how, when, and why do you give your current agency more budget? Because we knew everybody was struggling with biz dev. So how do you get
Mm-hmm.
more share of wallet from your existing clients? But
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, right after COVID, we did research and we talked to over 1,000 agency employees.
Mm.
And one of the things that was true, and we had done this about 5 years earlier, one of the big differences was that the post COVID study showed that one of the most important things for why an employee would stay at an agency was because they had a sense that their boss cared about their whole life, not
Mm.
just their work life, that
Mm.
they understood they were struggling with daycare or
Mm-hmm.
their mom had dementia or they were in the middle of a divorce or they were getting
Mm.
married or they were having a baby. It's not always sad things, but
Yeah.
that they really felt like the agency owner cared about their whole life, not
Mm.
just their work presence.
Mm.
And I think that's probably always been true, but I think
Yeah.
people feel more comfortable articulating it and
Mm-hmm.
asking for it. And so I think one of the onuses, one of the demands on us as business owners is we can't show up like we used to show up, like it's all
Mm-hmm.
business and that's what it is, because that doesn't meet the need of our team anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I believe it contributes to the dissatisfaction of owning a business when you feel disconnected
Mm-hmm.
from the people that work for you.
Yeah.
That makes it even lonelier.
Yeah.
So that sounds horrible to me,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating to think about the experience of showing up and not having some of that connection. Like that
Right.
sounds pretty awful to me too. But I think many people felt like they had to for a lot of the reasons we've talked about. You have to sort of put that face. I've got it all under control. And
Yep.
I think to you, right, that COVID sort of broke some of those things down. It gave people permission to show up and go, I need this. I need you to understand that,
Right.
yes, I'm trying to be the best account person I can be, but I'm also, like you said, caring for a relative, or I've got a baby on the way, or whatever. I've got a
I'm
sick
studying
dog.
for my MBA or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Like I've got other stuff.
And I think that feels like, sometimes people talk about this, like bring your whole self to work, and people go, well, what does that mean? I think it means that. I think it means, like you said, like work and life are blended. We are the same human being, whether we show up here or there, and we're bringing that stuff with us, whether you want us to or not. I'm bringing the fact that maybe my mom is dealing with the health issue or something like that. Like that's there. Wouldn't it be better to know it, understand it, and find a way to show up with some empathy and curiosity so you can be more human together? And as a result of that, I think when we're more human together, we work better together.
Right.
And I think that's the part of the equation that's starting to show up more for people. But I think we still have work to do on that end.
And the flip side of that is when I acknowledge what's going on in your life, then you are much more open to understanding that even though I'm the boss, whatever that means, I have crap going on in my life too. My kid's about to get kicked out of kindergarten because she's mouthy.
Right.
Whatever it is, like then I think we start to give each other grace.
Yeah.
Right? And so for much of my adult life, I have lived by a simple creed, which is gratitude, give, grace. And when we incorporate those things into our lives, right? So when we show up as an employer and we're grateful to our team about what they do, they're more likely to be grateful back to us. When we approach things where we give people grace, where we assume positive intent, where we recognize that they're doing their best, or we have a conversation when they're not doing their best to find out what's underneath it.
Yeah.
And, sometimes they just suck at their job and we have to make a change. That's a different thing. But a lot of times people are trying their best, but something is in the way of them being successful. They might need more education. They might not be getting very much sleep because they have a 2-month at home, whatever it is, right? So sometimes it's work related, sometimes it's life related.
Yeah.
And then when we try to come at it with a really giving attitude of, I want to help you be successful. When we show up that way to our employees, they're much more likely to extend those same things back to us. And when we are willing to be vulnerable enough to be human and show them that we need those things, because honestly, when I say to employees, I'll say, when was the last time you thanked, Bob for whatever Bob did for you? They're like, oh, I never even thought that Bob would need that.
Yeah.
Well, part of that's because Bob always acts like he's together and he doesn't need anything and he's got all the answers. And so again, I think it's about how we show up for each other and to each other that allows us to sort of give back what we need. Right. And I do think the owner is in the position that we have to give first. We have to be vulnerable first. We have to see them as a whole person first. We have to show the gratitude first. We have to model all of that because A, we're in a position of power. And B, if we don't model it, especially with some of our younger employees, they've never seen it.
They don't know it.
They don't know how to show up in a workplace. And so how we model that attitude and that behavior is going to show up in our workforce and in our work product and in the consistency of our work, in our profitability. It all is interwoven.
I agree. And you use that word model, and it makes me think about influence, right? And as an industry, advertising is very much about influence, and we try to influence consumers, we influence the culture. And what I start to wonder is, can we influence on this issue as well in terms of like creating work spaces. Can we be leaders at creating more human work environments for people? Can we lead the way? We sort of have a reputation as like, like I said earlier, a little bit cutthroat, a little bit crazy. Does advertising have a chance to lead in a different way, which is, we want to recognize people's humanity. We want to show up with love and compassion and curiosity, and give people who maybe are in other industries even, or just within our industry, a model that they can go,
right.
I'm curious about how I could do this, but I don't know how to do it. The ad industry, particularly those small to mid-sized shops who have the ability to really craft the experience in a way that maybe bigger ones don't. Do you see that as something that could be possible?
Absolutely. I mean, I and look at that business behaving in a different way, and they're still making money. Right.
Exactly.
And because that's what everyone thinks is if you show up in the way we've been talking about today, you can't possibly also be profitable.
Yeah.
And I would argue that that's actually the opposite of the truth, that the reality is when you have a committed workforce and when you are united as human beings, when things hit the fan, because they're going to, and you're going to have to stay late, or you're going to have to work longer hours, or someone's going to have to proof something on a weekend, or, agency life is not a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 kind of gig. So even though most days it can be that,
right.
When the team feels committed and connected, when somebody has to rise above and beyond, they're much more likely to. Yeah. Whether that's taking a client call on the weekend and making a client feel like they're a priority, whether that's coming back to the office and working on a new business pitch because you have to give it on Monday, so you have to practice it on Sunday, or whatever it is. When we feel connected and when we feel valued, we are much more likely to go above and beyond, which is how we make money.
Yeah.
So I think the whole idea of being soft, which is how a lot of people would describe what you and I are talking about, is somehow counterintuitive to making money, and that those two things don't go together.
Right.
It just feels very limited in its understanding to me. I also think at the end of the day, we work for two reasons. We work because we have to pay the mortgage and feed our family, but we also work because it's personally satisfying. Right. So Danyel and I could make as much money not being who and how we are, and being much more sort of black and white and cool and businessy. But I rarely go a day without being on the phone with a client or getting an email from a client where they don't express gratitude or end the call with saying, "Hey, I love you, man. Gotta go." Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do that all day long. That is why I work, right? Yeah. Yes, I have to pay the mortgage, but I work because I want to help people be their best and change their lives. I can do that when I come at it in a soft way.
Yeah. And I think that's to your point. I think it's very true. I do think it sounds counterintuitive to some folks. And I think showing that, this is the kind of thing that I want to start shouting from the mountaintops. It's just like, if you're doing this thing this way, meaning you're embracing this mindset of love and grace and empathy and compassion, and you're succeeding, please tell the world. I'm here to tell the world. That's part of why I started this podcast, is to just find people who are doing things like this to make the world of work better. And I want to just put my little spotlight on it and get it out to more people, because I think that's how it really changes, right? If suddenly you see not just the one, oh, that's an outlier, they must just have some weird thing going on, but like, oh, right, this is a trend now. I'm actually noticing that people are doing really well by approaching work this way. Then it filters into work at large. It maybe even finds a way to filter into the larger, scarier corporations where people might think, oh, change is really hard there. But if they see it modeled. So I really love that you're helping agencies to model that behavior. Certainly if there's any way I can help sort of shout that from the mountaintops more, I'm here to do that, because that's the kind of stuff I want to see more of in the world. And kind of coming off of that feeling, I'm wondering, and I have a feeling I know the answer, but are you feeling optimistic about the state of work, whether it's in the agency world or more broadly?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I
Mm-hmm.
think there are lots of things that have to be done in the world. And I think that um, at the end of the day, people hire people who help them solve problems. And there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing really more gratifying than
Mm-hmm.
being someone who relieves a client of a problem that they're having.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can be a problem solver and you can do it in a way that is caring and compassionate, that actually creates not only a connection within your own team, but
Mm-hmm.
I again with your clients too. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when a client feels seen and valued and cared for, they stick around longer too. So
Yep.
I think the secret to work is actually bringing your head and heart to work
Mm-hmm.
and letting both of them have a role in the craft that you have.
Mm.
Right. I mean, so I think part of the craft is you're a great writer or you're a great art director or you're great
Mm-hmm.
at code or whatever
Right.
it is, or you're a great business development person. But part of the craft is also connecting to human beings and making them
Mm-hmm.
feel like they're not so alone. I mean,
Yeah.
work for everybody can be lonely. And I
Mm-hmm.
think part of an agency's job is we are, when you think about an agency client, they live in this corporate environment that's very cutthroat. They
Mm-hmm.
get judged all the time. Their jobs are on the line.
Mm-hmm.
They need to know that it's okay to have a partner to think with, to dream with, to imagine, to
Mm-hmm.
blue sky with, where they're not going to be criticized for thinking that something's having a crazy idea.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a client safe place,
Yeah.
and I don't think you can be a safe place intellectually if you're not also a safe place emotionally.
Yeah.
When you're a client safe place,
Mm-hmm.
that's gratifying work, right?
Yeah.
That's important work. And
Mm.
it makes any job important. I don't care what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that I hope that part of what COVID has done for our industry, it's
Mm-hmm.
done for all industries, which has made it more human.
Yeah. I love that paradigm shift on the client relationship because it can show up in such a unnecessarily antagonistic way sometimes.
Right. Right.
And just reframing that through the lens of humanity and compassion and curiosity and recognizing the human being uh, in that other office and recognizing
Yep.
that like the same things we're talking about in terms of coming together as a team, embrace that same mindset, get to really know and understand people as people. Yeah, there's going to be days where they want something and you don't want to do that thing, but
Right.
now you kind of know why. You know where it's coming from, and you also know like it's just part of the normal ebb and flow of a human relationship, as opposed to it's us against them. Let's
No
let's
doubt.
let's hunker down. You
Well,
know.
and I think the other thing it does is that if you take the time to get to know the person, and I think if you show up to work that way every day,
Mm-hmm.
in many cases, you get to choose, right? You're successful enough that you get to choose who you work with. So if
Yeah.
you get to know a person and you're like, they're kind of yucky, right? If your
Mm-hmm.
business is successful, you get to go, you know what? Like, so as you know, one of our values is we have no tolerance for egos or assholes. We
Mm-hmm.
just don't work
Yep.
with people like that. I don't
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to.
Yep.
And so I will show up with gratitude, grace, and give. I will give everybody an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to show
Yes.
me that they're just having a bad day.
Mm-hmm. Of
And that's everyone's reality. I don't care how awesome you are.
course.
Um, but if you show up with a lot of ego or you're a jerk all the time,
Yeah.
I get to decide because
Mm-hmm.
our business is successful enough and we
Mm-hmm.
attract enough good people that we don't have to serve yucky people.
Mm.
And so we just don't. So I
Yeah.
think that's one of the privileges of showing up with your head and your heart, that
Mm-hmm.
A, you repel the wrong people pretty quickly, and
Mm-hmm.
B, you can expel people who just don't fit with the kind
Yeah.
of people you want to serve. But if you don't
Yeah.
get to know them, then everybody comes off kind of cold and cut and dried. And so then you can't really discern
Mm-hmm.
who's worth the
Who's
investment,
yeah.
right, of
Mm-hmm.
the time.
Yeah, that's really a really great way of looking at it. Um, One of the final questions I like to ask, and I feel like you've kind of answered it, but if there's more to add, please do, is if you had a magic wand and you could just make the world of work some ideal state, fully desuckified is the term I like to use. What does that look like to you?
I think it's gratitude, grace, and give. I think it's showing up with kindness. I think regardless of your, religious beliefs or political beliefs, I think if everyone practiced the religion of kindness, the world would be a much better place.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I'm a really big fan of the word grace because I think it's an active word to bring grace, to give grace. And it just can pull you out of the judgment so quickly. And our brains want to go to judgment so fast. And just to remind yourself, give grace. Okay. Maybe what's going on underneath here, that kind of a thing is wonderful. Yeah. So I think if we just showed up with that every day, I don't know what the percentage increase of satisfaction from work would be, but it's significant.
I think so too.
And then the other thing I ask people, and you don't have to do it if you're not up for it, but I do a lot of sound effects on my podcast. I'm a big cat guy, so there's cat sounds and everybody kind of adds a sound to it, usually each episode. Are you up for making a sound that I can add to the library?
Absolutely.
What do you got?
Yeah. I think desuckifying work, that sound we're dog people at my house.
Yeah.
And when the dog is relaxed or when a human reaches into another person and they are embraced and they do that exhale, that right? Like they let it all go. That to me is like one of the most gratifying sounds in the world because you can just feel them releasing the tension. Like the dog's like, oh, you're rubbing my belly. This is like the best day ever, right? And the dogs will do this big sigh, and people do it too. It's just, it's such a sense of letting go. And just being able to be present. And I just think if we can do that more for each other, that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah. I love that sound. And I can picture that sound. I'm a cat person, but I have a lot of friends with dogs. And you can just picture that moment where all of a sudden you just hear the, and it's just like, it comes off of you as much as it's coming off of the dog.
Absolutely. And so I think when we can trigger that sound in another human being. And sometimes it's not a sound, it's an attitude. Sometimes it's a silent sound, right? But when you can see that, just that deep breath and that just settling into themselves and feeling safe.
Yeah.
I think that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that took a little load off for me, so I appreciate that. And I think the last thing I'll ask is, how do people find you and get to know more about what you're doing, Drew?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to head over to agencymanagementinstitute.com. You can find the podcast there. You can find the courses. You can learn more about the peer groups. I'm pretty active on all social media, so you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook and Threads and Instagram and all the places. So we try to be super responsive. I will admit that sometimes it's hard to get to everybody as quickly as we want to, but I promise we will respond. So feel free to reach out. So I'm happy to hear from anybody.
That's great. Anything big on the horizon for you guys? Any plans for 2024 that are getting you excited?
We're knee deep already in planning the Build a Better Agency Summit, which is May 21st and 22nd in Denver. So 2 days of conference learning and a lot of peer-to-peer learning. We put people at tables, little round tables, and they share their best practices with each other. And so again, it's very collaborative and community focused, which I think aligns with sort of who and what we are. So we're knee deep in the planning for that every year. That's always our big moment every year.
Yeah. Well, I hope some folks listening get a chance to show up for that, because that sounds like a pretty wonderful weekend, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's a blast. It's great to meet other people who do what you do and actually find that they're willing to, what I'll overhear people saying things like, oh, I have a template for that. I'll send that to you. And, just that, again, that very cooperative, there's plenty of fish in the sea for everybody.
Abundance mindset.
Makes me happy. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Drew, really enjoyed talking with you. This was a very eye-opening conversation and one that I come away with a lot of hope. And I'm grateful for that.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. We'll take care.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the DesuckifyWork Podcast. And thanks to Drew for bringing insight, wisdom, and curiosity to our conversation. You can follow Drew on LinkedIn and check out his site at agencymanagementinstitute.com, where you'll find their podcast, info on courses, their blog, and a ton of other great content. Drew also hangs out on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads, so look for him there too. If you've listened to this episode and thought, hey, TJ seems like a great dude to have a conversation with, please reach out. We can set up a free half-hour What the Heck is Coaching All About session. Always happy to chat about non-coaching topics as well, like cats, Snoopy, hockey, peanut butter, and Eddie Van Halen. Hope to hear from you soon. Bye, everyone.